Hi. Okay, so we're going to continue with our metallic paint shader. So one of the things I'm going to do is that actually for these first two, I'm going to still have them to be very similar. I'm going to change this to Word and I'm going to delete this guy. There we go. Use this one, out value to reflection color amount. I'm going to bring this, if we had this at 8, we can bring this at maybe 9. So we have that first combination of two speculars. We can even bring this down, maybe something like 75. Just give it a render, see how it's looking. Most of it, I want to pay attention to the speculars. That's really what's going to make your things look better or not. Again, we shouldn't worry about so much about the samplings. I already talked briefly about the samples, but when we work on our sample scene where we will be able to get a final image, we will be working again with samples. So this is kind of what I was going for. I maybe want to bring this guy down a little bit. I just want a tiny bit of it. Something like that. And now I'm going to create my black or transparent code. So this shouldn't be a clear code, but this would be like our second code. And here, eventually what we'll do is that maybe we'll duplicate this ramp so this one has a stronger effect. But here, I want to pay attention to my clear code. So I'm going to bring this diffuse to 0, reflection to 1, plug this guy to my reflection amount, out value, reflection color amount, modify this curve. So it's a way more dielectric reflection and it has no metal component at all. Exactly what you would expect from a Fresnel curve, something like that. Plug this as my second code, and from here, just adjust a very small contribution, but something. Let's re-render it. So that's actually looking a lot nicer. So one of the things we can do is that we can change this color again for another facing ratio curve, so we will have a lot more contribution on the sides. We'll have some steady contribution in front, but we'll have almost a 90% contribution on the sides. So to do that, let me just bring this guy here, duplicate with our connections, and I'm gonna plug it here, out value to blend amount 1, RGB, there we go. So we had something like maybe a 0.2 at the beginning. We want to keep that. I want to keep this contribution here. I just want to give it some more contribution on the side. So I think it was like 2. I don't know, just based on the gray, it was somewhere around here. And then it's going to start going up to 1. Now let's see how that works. So the change here is going to be almost unnoticeable, but we're going to have this stronger reflection on the edges that really helps us give realism. I know this is a sphere, and sometimes it's hard to see when you're looking at a sphere, but when you have a lot of contours and your shapes are very complicated, you have a lot of detail in your model, these kind of effects are what's really going to make things different. If you have a moving camera, that 90-degree reflection at 100% are really going to make things look better and are going to add a lot of realism to your scene. So this is looking good. One of the other things we can do to create this metallic is that we can go ahead and get rid of this second code. We don't need it. We still have a very good combination between our clear code and our base material. I mean, if you really wanted to go full on, which sometimes I've done, if you're going to use some kind of 2D map as your blend amounts, is that you could have your stainless steel, then your aluminum paint, and then your urethane coat. But we're going to assume that the stainless steel has been completely painted, so we can go ahead and assume this guy is good for. The other thing we can do is that we can go ahead and create some flex material. So the V-Ray flex material, it's an excellent material that it's almost like a coat that you would put on top of it, and it's going to give you those aluminum, or depending on what kind of paint you're using, those metal tiny flakes on top of it. It's already pre-masked, so it's meant to work with the metallic, with the blend material. So we're just going to go ahead, plug this guy to add color to our color, and we're going to plug this guy to our coat material 0. I'm just going to re-render it and show you really quickly what I mean with this material. It's an excellent material when you're doing any kind of metallic paints or car paints. So what it does is that it gives you these tiny specks of color. We can come and control how much contribution we want from them, how much specular we want from them, but it's a really nice pre-made material for these kind of effects. So let me really quickly show you what it does. We have our flake color. Then we have just some basic parameters like flake glossiness, flake orientation, flake density, flake scale size, map size. The bigger this is, the longer it's going to take to compute, but there's going to be no tiling if you have really large surfaces. So we are just going to work really quick with the glossiness and the density. I'm going to bring this to 9. I want my flakes to be way more glossy, like very shiny metal. I mean, this shader, the V-Ray flake material, you could go ahead and create it by yourself. It's actually a procedural shader that has a glossy material with some kind of gradient on its diffuse color, and then you would create some kind of noise or cellular pattern as your mask. The advantage of using this is that it's already made for you. One of the things I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring down my contribution just a tiny bit. I don't want them to be so strong. That's good. And I'm going to bring the density up. Okay, so we have way more flakes. Maybe I want a tiny bit less of contribution. So let's put this at 12.5. You can see here the flakes are usually visible like closer to lighter areas. But here, since this is a sphere, you're not going to be able to see it that much, but we're still going to get some flakes. One of the things I'm going to do really quick before we end this video is just raise up my samples. I don't know, something like 64, just so we can clean up this noise without going into render settings, which I will try to avoid at all points in this tutorial because I just want to concentrate on shaders. So we're going to clean a lot of that noise. We're still going to have that glossy specular with that clear coat on top of it. We have some of these flakes that I could actually come and make them smaller. They still look too big. Again, since this is a sphere and I have no object for size relationship, it's a little bit different. But just for the sake of what I have in my mind, I'm going to bring this to 0.5, have their size, maybe bring this one up to 1, re-render. And this is a quick and very effective way to create any kind of metallic paint effect. We have a little bit of specs. We could even go ahead and add way more specs depending on how big or small your object is. We have that first glossy, broad specular layer that has our diffuse, which has a kind of gradient from the 90-degree angle to the 0% angle, and it's changing hue. And then we have that clear, very subtle thin coat on top of it that it's usually not a metallic paint. It's usually some kind of lacquer that it's going to give that very glossy end. So I'm going to stop here. On the next tutorial, we're going to create even more sample shaders, and then we're going to start working on our final scene.